do know that the area is 96 centimeters squared. So you need to know how to find area of a rectangle before you can answer this question, right? So to find area of a rectangle, the formula we're going to use is length times width equals area. Now, we're given some information here. So all we're going to do is insert the information we're given into the formula and then solve for the unknown part. So we're given that the length or width or whatever you want to call it is 12 centimeters, so they're interchangeable. And you're also given that it's x for the length or the width, whichever you want to call it. So it's really going to be 12 times x, which I don't know how much that is yet. And that's going to be equal to my total area, which is 96. So all I did here was I used my formula, which was length times width equals area. And I replaced length and width with 12 and x, because those are my two dimensions. And I replaced area with 96, which was my area I was given. Okay, so now I just have to solve this algebraic equation that I just wrote to find what the missing length, or x, is of this rectangle. So I start by doing a dotted line down the equal sign here. I am always going to start on the side that contains the variable because my goal is to make it x equals, right? I want to get rid of this 12 that's being multiplied by x because I just want x alone. So I'm going to use the inverse operation in order to work backwards to figure out to get rid of that 12. So this is 12 times x, so the inverse of multiplying is dividing. So if I divide by 12, and then on the right-hand side of the equation, I'm also going to divide by 12. What I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other to maintain that balance. Well, 12 divided by 12 is 1. So I'm left with just x on its own, 1x here, equals, and then I just have to do 96 divided by 12, which is 8. So I find that x is 8 centimeters. And if we look at our original equation, length times width equals area, that works out. Because if I substitute the value 8 back in for length, now I have 8 times 12 equals 96, and 8 times 12 is 96. So that works when I check it. All right, so the key here, we're using algebra to solve for that unknown length of the rectangle, right? We have to be able to not only write the equation, but then use inverse operations to actually solve for that missing variable. All right, let's take a look at number 2. Similar, but slightly different here. It says the triangle below has a perimeter of 46.5 feet. Write and solve an algebraic equation to find the missing side length. So when we talk about perimeter, remember, to find perimeter, I'm just going to add up all of my sides, right? So when I think about that, right, my formula is just going to be my perimeter equals, and it's just going to be my side lengths all added together. So if it's a triangle, it has 3 sides, so it's side 1 plus side 2 plus side 3, right? And that gives me my perimeter of the triangle. Well, for this triangle, I'm given 2 of the sides. I have 25 feet, and I have 12.3 feet. The third side is missing. It's called y, and I don't know why it should say feet, not centimeters, so sorry about that. And then our perimeter that we're given is 46.5 feet that we're already given in the problem. So I'm going to replace perimeter, which is P, with 46.5. And I know that's going to be equal to if I add all the sides together. So I have 25 plus 12.3 plus y. And I don't know what y is yet, right? That's what I'm trying to do. All right, so there are 2 different ways that you could go about solving this equation. The first way is to simplify the right-hand side of this equation by combining your like terms, which are the 25 and the 12.3. Don't forget, that's just addition, right? I can add 25 plus 12.3 very easily. Remember, when we're adding with decimals, we just line up the decimal point, right? There's nothing next to the 25, so that's really 0.0. and then when I add them up, the decimal point stays in the same spot, and I get 37.3. So really, if I just simplify this, I get 46.5 equals, and then when I add together 25 and 12.3, it's 37.3 plus y. Okay, from here, this is just a one-step algebra problem. So I'm trying to figure out what y is. So I'm going to start on the side that contains the variable. Right, so I'm going to start on that right-hand side because that's where the y is. Now I need to use the inverse operation to isolate that variable, to get y on its own. Well, 37.3 plus y, I know this 37.3 is positive, right? So if I want to get rid of it, I'm going to subtract 37.3. Now I have to do that from both sides of the equation in order to keep it balanced. And when I do it on the left side, you're going to notice I'm going to make sure I line up those decimal points so that my subtraction stays accurate. 37.3 minus 37.3 leaves us with 0, which is why we did it. So we end up with y on its own. And now I just do my subtraction. 5 minus 3 gives me 2. I'm going to need to borrow here. So the 6 becomes a 16, and the 4 becomes a 3. 16 minus 7 gives me 9. My decimal point stays in the same location because I lined them up. And 3 minus 3 is 0. So I get 9.2 is equal to y. Now I did say when we were looking at this at the beginning that there were two ways you could do it from that first step. You could use repeated inverse operations there when you're at 46.5 equals 25 plus 12.3 plus y, and just subtract the 25 and subtract the 12.3 from both sides. That way it tends to be a little bit more confusing though for students, so I would recommend just doing it this way. All right, now if I take my value 9.2 and plug it back in and see, well, does that give me a perimeter of 46.5, right? Well, I know if I add the three sides together, it should be equivalent to 46.5, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to take 9.2, which was my new one that I got, and I'm going to add to that the 25.0 and the 12.3. And indeed, if you add those up together, you get the 46.5 that we needed to get in order to answer this correctly. All right, so looking at this, right, you know, we're using algebra to solve for a missing side length in a geometric situation. But really, we see that algebra is entailed in all these different things that we're working on. Right? So it's just a way of thinking about a problem and working backwards to find that missing part. All right. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys have a great day, and hopefully this helped you learn something. Go ahead and do the try this on the back and then enter your answer in school with you.